Hello, Sagittarius, and welcome to your October forecast. I am also a Sagittarius rising, so this is for my people. So the month of September, you had the topics of your home, family of origin, ancestry, and your foundation come together with the topics of your 10th house of career, your public persona, and what you are known for in these eclipses. And so October is really a moment of integration and kind of seeing what happens after the dust settles. So I know a lot of Sagittarius risings have been going through it for the month of September. Like I know so many Sagittarius risings who I've personally read for moving to a foreign land, moving outside of the United States of America, and changing careers. And for me personally, this was me coming out publicly, claiming that I'm an astrologer. This is what I'm passionate about doing, and including astrology as something that I do for a living. And some of y'all, if you're American or if you're from the West, you're like, why is that a big deal? Because my mother specifically wasn't, not that she wasn't supportive, but she was just kind of like, really? Like, that's what you're going to do? So, the topics of the fourth house with my family and my filial duty and my responsibility, and all of these traditional things were coming up with my career. And those two topics were coming together for me during these eclipses. So, that's kind of how it was playing out for me. And I think with the South Node going through my 10th house, it's a pivot because I had been doing so many different things up until this point and wanting to do astrology and wanting to claim that this is what I do. But there was still this sense of insecurity within me that I wanted validation from my parents. And so the releasing of that, the perfectionism, the doing what I'm told is signified by that South Node in the 10th house. All right, let's get into it. So on October 1st, Mercury in Libra will square Jupiter in Cancer at 22 degrees. So, really, in the month of October, Jupiter, your ruling planet, isn't really making any moves except for its squares from Mercury and trines from Mercury as well, and Mars and Scorpio. And it's not your planet's not like, it's not like, the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus or Mars, where these planets tend to move faster because those are the personal planets, they're the inner planets. Your ruler moves signs once a year. So when it moved into Cancer back in June, that was a big deal. That was an ingress that this transit you will experience for the next year in the sign of Cancer in your eighth whole sign house. So when we have Mercury in Libra, which is transiting through the area of your life of friendships, groups, and organizations, and a square to the eighth house, this could be a conflict of ideas, conflict of communication with people in your friendship groups. This could be just not being on the same page with a group of people. Mercury rules your 10th house of career and your 7th house of partnership. So maybe, you pursuing something new in terms of careers is causing friction between you and your partner, or you and, your finances, perhaps, since Jupiter is transiting through your 8th house of shared income. On October 4th, Venus in Virgo will conjunct the South Node at 18 degrees. So I wasn't actually going to include this transit because it's not like, okay, so the reason why I am including it is because it ended up being a bigger deal in the collective than I thought it would be. And so if you think back to September 10th, when the sun was conjunct the South Node, and then September 11th, when Mercury was conjunct the South Node, I'm just flagging this for Sagittarius risings because your 10th house is an angular house. It's the most public area of your chart. And so think back to what happened between September 10th and 11th. That is actually when I publicly shared that I'm an astrologer and that I'm teaching astrology and that I'm launching this course. And I also appeared on Amanda Seales' show, and she had me on for an hour and we talked all things astrology. So it was kind of like my coming out, even though I was practicing astrology before then and I was doing it, it wasn't at the scale where I like accepted that. And so now Venus, which is in its fall in the sign of Virgo, there's something about maybe a falling out with a friend since Venus rules your 11th house, or maybe a job environment since Venus also rules your 6th house. So also be careful about your health. I'm telling this to every sign because whenever a personal planet goes to the South Node, you could feel tired, you could feel lethargic. This is a day to be mindful of your energy. And at a collective level, you just want to watch out for what happens because September 10th and 11th was when we had an assassination of that man. And so that kind of brought this disruption of the collective and all this dialogue back and forth of empathy and when you should mourn people and all that stuff. And so engaging in that kind of discourse, as Virgo is ruled by Mercury, which is the sign of communication, and a couple of days before that you're going to have Mercury square Jupiter in Cancer, which is your chart ruler. I would just be mindful during this time of like, is it worth arguing with people? What is worth your energy? On October 6th, Mercury will ingress into the sign of Scorpio. And so Mercury will then be transiting through your 12th house of the unseen and the unknown. And then on the same day, there's a full moon in Aries at 14 degrees. This happens at 11:47 p.m. Eastern time. Please adjust for your time zone. So I actually want to show you the chart like I've been doing with the other signs. And Aries is the area of your chart that is the house of good fortune. This is the house of sex, romance, pleasure, joy, children. So, yeah, let's get into it. Let's look here. Full moon in Aries. So this is the chart for the full moon, not for your sign. So you just want to be mindful that what I'm about to show you isn't for the Sagittarius rising. This is just the full moon chart, but this full moon is happening in your 5th house. So here we have the sun at 14 degrees of Libra, and every full moon is an opposition, which is one of the 5 Ptolemaic aspects in astrology. And opposition is a contentious, tense conflict aspect. And the moon here is at 14 degrees of Aries. The ruler of this full moon is Mars in Scorpio here. And Mars is in its domicile in the sign of Scorpio, and Mars is transiting through your 12th house. So there's some ending, some completion around your 5th house topics. So like I said, this is the house of pleasure, romance, your children. Something might be completing for your children, like they might be finishing up with school, or they might be finishing up with something, or like your child is going through something in this full moon. Maybe you're finishing up a situationship and you're deciding that you want to take your relationship to the next level and you're committing to this person. You were going through eclipses in your 4th and 10th houses. So I'm sure a lot of family stuff has been coming up. A lot of, whether it's your own like nuclear family or your extended family or your family of origin. And so maybe this is like a completion of something and you're saying goodbye to a child, or not like your child is moving away from home is what I'm trying to say. This could be an ending to a friendship or an affiliation with a group. You might, I know a lot of Sag risings who are moving again. So like Mars in its domicile, moving through the 12th house. This could just be like, I'm leaving my homeland. Like I'm going somewhere else. But ultimately, if you have your Sag rising in and around, let's say like 10 to 19 degrees of Sag, then this full moon is trine to you. So this is like an extension of you. And so maybe you're putting out some creative project. Maybe you're coming to this climactic moment of, I need to create this thing, whether it's a child literally, or it's a project, or it's something that you want to create in the material realm. So that is the full moon. On October 13th, Venus will ingress into Libra, which is the sign of its domicile. And I absolutely love this for you because the 11th house is your friendship house, groups, organizations, and also your long term goals and aspirations. And the 11th house is in a natural sextile to you. So it's a supportive house. And so this is a time to like get out there, mingle, meet new people, meet people who are aligned to your values, as Venus signifies values and worth. And Libra is ultimately the sign of harmony, balance, and social justice. So I really like this transit for you personally. Um, and then on October 21st, there will be a new moon in Libra at 28 degrees. And this happens at 8:25 a.m. Eastern time. So let's look at the solar eclipse chart here. Okay. Favorites. Can you see this? Hold on. Let me do this over again. Okay. So a new moon is a conjunction between the sun and the moon. So they are in the same sign. So here we have 28 degrees Libra new moon. It's a new beginning, setting intentions. And the ruler of this new moon is Venus in Libra, co-present here. I love this again. This is like starting new alliances, setting intentions to be a part of a group or start a new group. Venus also rules your sixth house of your health, your rituals, your work environment, pets. Some of you might decide that you want a soulmate that's a pet. This is just really lovely. And again, Libra is your 11th house, which is in a sextile to you. And so this is very supportive. You might feel very supported at this time from people who you feel are aligned with you personally through your values, through your values. So that's a lovely new moon. And on the very next day, on October 22nd, Neptune will retrograde and re-enter Pisces in your fourth house. And so Neptune has been transiting through your fourth house of home, family, ancestors since 2011. So it's a 14-year transit. And now it's finishing. Wait, is it 2011? Yeah. So it's finishing up this story of yours. And so Neptune here might have left you confused or about like where you want to live. It might have had a lot of Sag risings, including myself, be more nomadic in nature. You might have felt called to live by an ocean since Pisces is a water sign and it's your fourth house. And now it's retrograding back here and it's finishing up its cycle. Neptune is ultimately the planet about imagination and dreams. And so for Sag risings, like maybe you are finding and building and buying your dream home, a place where you truly feel is the place of your dreams. On the same day, the sun will ingress into Scorpio. And so you move from your 11th house season of friendships and groups to now more of an isolated season of your 12th house. This is intentional isolation and intentional retreat and recuperation before your season that goes through your first house. I personally love Scorpio season. I like it better than Pisces season, which is the fourth house, which is like endings, and the eighth house of Cancer. I feel super emotional when it's that season. Scorpio season for me, I always go to a bathhouse. I go to a Korean spa. I do the sauna. I get a body scrub. I intentionally like become more um like antisocial. I journal. I just do a lot of self-care because it's just like Scorpio is a fixed water sign. I mean, my chart ruler happens to be here, so it's a very important time for me to rest and recuperate. But all of the topics of um like your ninth house, since it rules the sun. Your ninth house is Leo, so the sun rules the ninth house of spirituality, of God. This is the house of God. This is the house of philosophy and understanding on more of like maybe a spiritual level, like why you're here, your divine purpose. All of those topics are imported now into the 12th house. And so a lot of Sag risings might be interested in doing some healing work, getting a reading from an astrologer or a medium, or just doing that kind of work, going to a tarot card reader. And on the same day, Mercury will be in its pre-shadow officially at 20 degrees, and the actual Mercury retrograde happens on November 9th. So you want to pay attention to what happens during the pre-shadow. On October 24th, the sun in Scorpio will square Pluto in Aquarius. So the sun in your 12th will square the third house of Pluto in Aquarius. I would say watch out for your mind at this time. Watch out for what you're consuming. You know, old wounding from the past might come up at this time, old traumas. On the same day, Mercury in Scorpio will trine Jupiter in Cancer at 24 degrees. And so, Mercury, the planet of communication, and it is the messenger of the gods. And Mercury was the one that helped the deceased transition into the underworld. And it is trine to Jupiter in Cancer, which is your eighth house. So, yeah, I mean, topics of your mortality can come up at this time, topics of like intimacy, vulnerability. You know, Mercury also rules, again, your 10th house of career, your one on one partnerships. Jupiter is your chart ruler. It's in the eighth house of death and shared income and resources. So you might just be talking to your family or your partner about money, and maybe you're going to create a will at this time. But ultimately, trines are harmonious aspects. So this is obviously an aspect that you can take advantage of at this time if any of those topics I mentioned are at the forefront of your mind. But ultimately, I would use this date. Obviously, the sun is square Pluto, so just like be mindful of things that do come up. But this could be a great day to be vulnerable and share your story with somebody that you trust. On October 25th, Mercury in Scorpio will trine Saturn retrograde in Pisces at 26 degrees. So that same aspect Mercury made the day before with Jupiter is now making a trine to Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And so these 2 days, I would say that whole week, Sagittarius, you might be getting downloads from a deceased family member. You might be getting the call from the dead, essentially, because Saturn is the Grim Reaper. Saturn is transiting through your fourth house of ancestors. Mercury is in the house of the unseen and the unknown. I like to always first protect myself, and I always acknowledge the spirit and say, I understand you're here, and like listen to your intuition. If this is a spirit that is not gonna do harm and is your spirit or the spirit of your home, I say, please don't disturb me while I'm sleeping. I really need my sleep. I ask them what they want. Ultimately, they just want to be acknowledged. When my sister and I traveled to Portugal 2 years ago, we stayed at this old home in like the countryside of Sintra, and we booked it because it looked like one of those old homes, that was passed down through generations. And in the middle of the night, I feel tapping on my head, and I'm like, oh, fuck no. And it was a little girl spirit that belonged to that house. And the next day, Oh, well, that night I was just like, oh, leave me alone. I'm trying to sleep. The next day, my sister did this energetic thing in the room. It's the spirit of the house, so we can't tell it to leave. But I just told the spirit, I said, listen, I acknowledge you're here. This is your home. This is your space. It was probably her room, but please do not disturb me while I'm sleeping. Like, I will be so freaking cranky in the morning. And I already wasn't feeling well because I was jet lagged, but I was like, I acknowledge you, but leave me alone. And then the next day and the rest of the trip, she didn't bother me while I was sleeping, as long as I acknowledged her. So this is all to say, y'all might be getting some of those, um, like you might be tapping into the unseen realms with these transits. On October 28th, Mars in Scorpio will trine Jupiter in Cancer at 24 degrees. And so I really like this aspect, especially for Sag risings, because again, Jupiter is your chart ruler. Mars in its domicile in Scorpio is a very determined, ambitious placement. This is a Mars that is not easily distracted, maybe can become obsessed and revengeful if you can use this in a more um conscious way. This is like if you have debt of some kind, because Jupiter's in your eighth house of debt. If you have anything that you want to clear away, you could use Mars's like cutting away energy to clear debt, pay off anything that you want to. This is a great day to set an intention or actually do it because, you know, it's a trine to do something that you feel very passionate about too. On October 29th, Mercury will ingress into Sagittarius in your first house. And this is where Mercury has its joy. So a lot of Sagittarius risings might be feeling really mentally stimulated at this time. Mercury is in its detriment in Sagittarius, so this is a Mercury that's a little bit dogmatic, is a little preachy. So you want to be aware of that. Don't come off as preachy. Don't come off as arrogant. You know. Um, but this is officially like this period when Mercury goes into Sagittarius. You want to look out for because this is part of your retrograde story. Um, your partner, because Mercury rules your partnership house and your career, are all being imported into your first house. So people just might be like paying attention to you more from work, or your boss might be just like paying attention to what you're doing. Your partner might be paying attention to what you're doing, or vice versa. But yeah, I think overall, October, like I said, is a month of integration. It's a month to really like do a personal audit and like look at where the dust settles of the eclipses and decide this month what it is that you desire, like what it is that you want, and start making the moves of doing it because um right now, most of the planets are still retrograde. And so this is a time of recalibration and review. But I would definitely use those transits where Mars is in its domicile with Jupiter in its exaltation to get something done, to clear away debt, to clear away all that like emotional residue and baggage, and do some healing work this month as well. So that is your month, Sagittarius. I hope you have a beautiful month, and I will see you next month in November.